Hola, ¿cómo están? And what is going on, guys? DarkScheme here. And today I'll be talking to you guys a little bit about strafing and Halo 5. And if you're familiar with playing Halo 5, this iteration of Halo is a game where it is more difficult to aim as there is less aim assist. And because of those reasons, strafing is a very important part in the gameplay. For those that don't know, strafing is the movement you use to avoid taking damage and or to delay your death. Strafing, whether using thrust or not, is very useful to throw off your opponent's aim. But be warned and be aware, strafing can sometimes cause your aim to suffer as well. From the basics, strafing side to side is a good and simple method of avoiding damage, but can become too predictable. Adding things into strafing is what can cause a good player to become a great player. And in Halo 5, adding any type of movement is extremely viable. First, let's talk about thrust. Thrust is usually the main ability you'll want to use while in a gunfight. It is one of your most valuable movement options and easily throws your opponent's aim off as your character moves out of range of their reticle. Try throwing in a thrust when your shields are about to pop to throw off your opponent's last shot and make yourself a harder target to kill. Next up is crouching. Crouching can be invaluable when added into your strafe, as for the most part, most players will be aiming at the upper half of your character. While slowing your character's movement, it can definitely help you out when you've already used your thrust and are waiting for its cooldown to be up. Try throwing in a few crouches while continuing to strafe left and right and see how it feels. And next up is jumping. While personally, in my opinion, jumping isn't the best at throwing off your opponent on its own, it definitely adds another option that can be combined with both thrust and crouch. Make sure you don't jump too often and try jumping when your shields are depleted to make yourself harder to kill. A final tip on jumping: while in midair, repeatedly press the crouch button. This movement is known as Gandhi hopping and is used to make your character's head more difficult to shoot. To make sure you have the ability to use the Gandhi hop correctly, go into your settings and turn off toggle crouch. And last but not least, I want to talk about distance. One final thing that can be said about strafing is that knowing what works at closer ranges and what works at longer ranges is key. For example, crouch strafing while up close is super effective, but at longer ranges can be detrimental, as crouching at an opponent who is at a longer range will have to move the reticle a lot less. Jumping can go both ways, but remember, jumping too much can make you predictable, both close and long range. The thrust ability is the only option that can be used effectively at both ranges. But again, having this ability on cooldown makes it a little bit tougher. One final thing that I will say about distance is to remember you also have the option of moving towards your opponent and away from. If you're up close and you can tell your opponent wants to melee you, thrusting away or jumping away can cause them to miss their melee and give you enough time to get in 1 or 2 shots. If you're at mid-range, hitting a few shots and moving towards your opponent for the melee kill can be a good option. While this usually ends in a melee to melee trade, it's recommended to use this when you're already down in shots against your opponent. But that is pretty much all I have to say about strafing from a basic point of view, and hopefully you guys learn a thing or two from these tips. As always, I'd like to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.